Okay, it is 10 o'clock on the dot, 1 p.m. Pacific. Oh no, 10 p.m., 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and I guess a little bit earlier in Hawaii. But here we are. Good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday. You know, it's a late night when I can't figure out what time of day it is right now, but we are live. What's up, Jim? How's it going, brother? Good to have you here. I created a hybrid of some of the training I was going to do with you guys, but I added the family recovery component of it today. So a few of the items, Jim, you probably heard me talk about on Wednesday briefly, but the rest of it's all new content. So I look forward to you being here as always. Everybody else, what is up? Happy Saturday. I'm grateful to be here again, providing another family education and support group intended to kind of bring about some awareness and some education and some insight on the recovery process. So for those of you who are watching the first time, my name is Param. I have a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. I am a licensed addictions counselor. I am also personally clean and sober. I've been sober since June 13th of 2008. And for that, I am grateful. And yeah, I'm just really happy to be here. So for those of you trickling in, we do have a side chat feature over there that you can ask any questions you want. For those of you who are brave enough that want to come on to the live stream with me, there's a link here that I'm going to post. All you got to do is click on it and you would be able to participate in the program. What's up, Lynn? Good to have you here. So all that being said, Beta, good morning. Everybody's here. Good. The usual suspects, as I like to call you guys. So let's get right into it. Today, I am going to be talking about questions, specific questions that everyone who is in the recovery process should and needs to ask themselves on a regular basis. Okay, on a regular basis. So what do I mean by that is not once in a while, not once a week, once a month. Throughout the week, regularly, we want to check in on this. So let me get into what these questions are. And why are these questions important is because this, my friends, the addiction process, the consequences of addiction, the impact of addictions are stressful, they're overwhelming, they're financially, emotionally, spiritually heavy. It's a burden to experience. And we can lose ourselves in the midst of the weight and the gravitas of addiction. We can really lose ourselves in that. So why does this become important? And I'll tell you guys this. Good morning, Debbie. Is if we don't stop and check in the healing and recovery process, if we don't stop and check to see where we are and which side is up and how we are doing, the recovery process becomes a very daunting task because nobody comes into recovery on a winning streak. No person struggling with addictions comes into recovery on a winning streak. Nobody, a family member with a loved one with addiction comes in on a winning streak. Everybody is just kind of like redlined all the way down. They're exhausted. So when you come in here, we have to ask these questions of ourselves. And what are these questions? So it's outlined in the side chat, in the description of this video, and I'll bring them up and feel free if you have any questions specifically, if you want any insights, feel free to go with it. So question number one that everyone in the healing and recovery process must ask themselves, whether they are the individual struggling with addictions or the family member, is, am I today investing in myself? Am I investing in myself? And what does that investment mean? That investment means, am I doing something today for my mind, for my body, and for my spirit? So let's just look at the body component of it. Those who use substances, let's just say alcohol, they're putting in a foreign poison into their body. Ethanol is a poison that goes into the bloodstream, that goes to all of the organs equally. It's the equal opportunity destroyer. Alcohol impacts the hair, the skin, the nails, the tissues, the organs, the liver, the kidney, the brain, all of it. Stimulants, right? When people are using stimulants, methamphetamines, cocaine, they stay up for extended periods of time. They don't sleep. They go through psychosis. They don't eat. All of their cycles are completely dysregulated. When people are using painkillers for an extended period of time because of physical pain, emotional pain, I'm talking about like the opiates and the heroines and the fentanyls, when they get off that stuff, their bodies physically ache and they're in pain, and so on and so on. And family members, when your loved one's going through addiction and you're not sleeping, you're not resting, you're neglecting yourself, you're neglecting your mind, your body, your spirit. In the beginning is, are you investing in your body? Are you taking care of your body? Are you putting in healthy nutrition into your body? Are you walking around the block? Are you resting? Are you sleeping? Are you breathing? And then, are you investing in your mind? You know, I had this talk with our program participants this morning. There's many people that they'll work hard throughout the week, and then Saturday and Sunday, they'll get on their phones and they'll get on the TV and they'll start watching Netflix. And I'm not talking about watching Netflix. They'll start watching Netflix and they'll binge and they'll binge and they'll binge. And the entire time they're doing that, their brain is not activated. It's called mindless TV. So are you doing something to invest in your mind in the healing and recovery process? And lastly, are you doing something to invest in your human spirit? What is the human spirit, man? It's that stuff that we get goosebumps when we see certain things, we hear certain things. You know, you watch those little videos that someone comes and surprises somebody after they haven't seen them in a while, whether it's like a veteran or like a mom or a dad, or someone comes to a school and their kid sees them and they just kind of, you know, they lose it. Or you see something with some like puppies or some animals and just like a rescue, you know, that a life of something was saved. You see something with homelessness, helping out homeless people out there, and you see the human compassion and it just feels good. Watching some movies, you know, I used to watch Undercover Boss all the time just to get that feeling at the end of it when the individual realizes that the person that they were working with happens to be like the CEO of the company, and the person gives them a bunch of stuff. And there's like this feeling we get that we can't explain. And it's universal. We all get these universal goosebumps, right? And are you doing something for that? Because I'll tell you this, man, addiction zaps the spirit. I've seen so many moms and dads and grandparents and siblings walk around lifeless because of the addiction of someone else. Lifeless. And are you doing something to feed that spirit right now? So, you know, whenever the word investment comes up, I always want you to think about a bank account, okay? Every bank account has something called deposits and has something called withdrawals. Now, in life, we automatically take withdrawals as a byproduct of life, as a byproduct of the way life moves forward. Every day when you wake up, you're withdrawing. You're withdrawing, you're withdrawing, you're withdrawing. Life happens. You drive to work. Someone gets sick. There's some financial situations going on. There's health. There's addiction. Withdrawal, withdrawal, withdrawal. You are the only person solely responsible for putting in deposits. Because if you don't put in deposits, my friend, eventually you're going to run out. Your account's going to go low. Your account's going to go overdrafted. Your account's going to get closed. So what are you doing to deposit and invest in yourself today? Right? And if, by the way, if it's nothing, just own up to it. Just say, hey, you know what? This guy Parham had this talk this morning and really like motivated me to say, what have I been doing with my life? Why am I not investing in myself today? Why am I so hyper-focused on my loved one? And hopefully the goal is to be able to bring about some internal motivation to start investing today. You know, they say this all the time in investments, a financial investment. The best time to invest was 20 years ago. The second best time to invest is right now. So maybe you didn't take care of what you needed to take care of in the past. But today, when you hear this, are you going to start today? Because here's why, my friends. In the future, a week from now, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, 5 weeks from now, this moment is going to be the past. And if you don't plant a seed today and you don't water and you don't grow it, you're going to come up in the future and there's going to be nothing there. So the next one for family members to address here is, am I holding on to guilt or shame? Okay, so I want you to really think about that one. And if, by the way, if some of you are experiencing some guilt right now, feel free to share the comments. If you want to pop up and talk to me here, you absolutely can. And some people say, hey, I don't want to have the camera up or I don't want to be seen. that's okay. You can pop up with just your audio and ask questions. I'm pretty good in the moment. You know, I'm very spontaneous with my responses. So am I holding on to guilt? And I'll tell you this, most family members who their loved one goes into treatment, they have some level of guilt with the whole process. And where does guilt come from? So guilt comes from one of two things. Guilt is either doing something you shouldn't have done or not doing something you should have done. That's it, plain and simple. Guilt comes from one of two things: doing something you shouldn't have done, not doing something you should have done. So the good news about that is guilt comes from an action or an inaction. Guilt comes from an action or an inaction. And you know, how many times have we dealt with it? Yeah, Jim said this is a great investment every Saturday. Thanks, Jim. I'm glad that I'm able to be a part of your investment strategy. You do so many things to invest on yourself on a daily basis. And one of these days, I'm going to get you to pop up here, by the way. We'll talk about it Monday, and I want you to be my guest. But what's going to happen here is this, is I've seen so many families come through with their loved ones struggling with addiction. And I'm sure Jim has too, Julie, all these counselors that are here. And maybe at some point in their life, there was some type of dysfunction, maybe a divorce, marital discord, maybe a lot of moving. And one of the parents, one or both of the parents, experienced a lot of guilt for their loved one's impairment. So the kid started struggling in school, started losing his friends, her friends. The parents feel responsible for that. And out of guilt, they begin this cycle of enabling and codependency because they just feel so bad about it. Happens all the time with divorce. One of the parents is just so guilty that the kid, and by the way, your loved one is a master of knowing who, what, where, when. They know what buttons to press, how to get to one person, how to enable a response from someone. Man, these kids become masters of this stuff. So if you don't stop that cycle of guilt now and realize that today in this moment, you're doing everything you possibly can for your recovery and your loved one's recovery, 5 years down the line, you're still going to be operating out of guilt, doing something you know you shouldn't have done. You know, there's so many family members that tell me point blank, Parham, I know you said that we shouldn't do this. I know you said we shouldn't do that. I know you said we shouldn't enable, give this money, let them back in the house, pay off their credit card bill. But when it came down to it, I just felt so bad. I didn't want their credit to get ruined. I didn't want them to sleep, homeless overnight. I didn't want them to hate me. I didn't want them to. It's all a guilt response. Because the recovery response would be to hold your boundaries and stand true. So why do people know something and despite of knowing it, do the contrary? Guilt. They feel bad. They got poor boundaries. They got weak boundaries, and they feel bad. So the next question to ask, and this one comes straight from an inventory of 12 steps. So majority of you hopefully have been exposed to some 12 steps, and all the family members here. I'll tell you something about the 12 steps that you might not know. That there are many different 12-step programs, right? We have Alcoholics Anonymous, we have Narcotics Anonymous, we have Codependence Anonymous, we have Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, we have Gamblers Anonymous, debt, people that are struggling with debt, Underpayers Anonymous, I have Marijuana Anonymous, they're all there. We also have Al-Anon, which is for family members of those with alcohol problems. We have Nar-Anon, which is for family members of those with alcohol problems. We have Alateen, which is like teenagers. But I'll tell you this about all those programs. The first half of the first step is the only thing that's different amongst all of them. So the first half of the first step says, I'm powerless over alcohol, or I'm powerless over drugs, or I'm powerless over gambling, or I'm powerless over people, or I'm powerless over my loved one's addiction. The second half says, and my life has become unmanageable. So the other 11 and a half steps of 12-step programs are the same. So when you work a program of recovery as a family member and your loved one's working one, you're working the same program. How about that? Which is very phenomenal, because when two people work the same program, a common language of recovery gets created. That common language of recovery allows you in the here and now to talk to your loved one in a way that you couldn't do in the past, because in the past, the common language was addiction, enabling, codependency. And we know how that one works out, right? So the part of a 10th step of the 12-step programs is this daily inventory or nightly inventory that we need to take. Okay. And where does that come from? It's a development of the first step, the fourth step, which we do our resentments, the eighth and ninth step, which we make right with other people. So what is the 10th step inventory? And these are the questions you have to ask yourself. Am I resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? So you sit down at the end of the day and say, where was I resentful today? And by the way, family members, I'm going to give you permission for something right now. Okay. So listen up. I'm giving you permission that you have the right to be resentful towards addiction. You have the right to be resentful towards the consequences that addiction has had in your life, your family's life, your spiritual life, your physical life, your psychological life. You have even the right. You want another permission? You have the permission to be resentful at your loved one for the actions him or her has taken while under the influence of drugs and alcohol. You have the right to be resentful to your spouse, to society for the ways that addiction just gets fostered in our environment, our communities. You have the right to be resentful to anything you want to be resentful to. However, you got to acknowledge the fact that you're resentful towards it. You have to accept it. And then you have to do this one thing. What is my part? Without asking that second question when it comes to resentments, all you're doing is complaining and being toxic and unhealthy. And you're actually going to eventually impact yourself, the lives of others in ways that you don't even want to. So what is my part? So if you're resentful, let's say, towards addiction and the consequences of addiction, you have the right to be, by the way. That should piss you off. You should be upset that you lost sleep, you lost money, you lost friends, you lost resources, you lost peace of mind. That should piss you off. But what's your part? Did you allow it to happen? Did you allow it to happen out of fear, because of lack of education, lack of knowledge, because of uncertainty, because of just not being strong enough, not having support? What were the reasons why? What was your part? And then guess what? Work on your part. Work on your part to prevent that from happening. And watch what happens to the resentments when you own up to your part. This is 12 Steps 101, my friends. This is like the essence of this stuff. What is my part? We have a part in everything that we do. Sometimes we don't want to look at that part because we want to look at somebody else's part and say, yours is worse than mine. So, hey, I'm right and you're wrong. We could do that, but try it and let me know. Come back and let us know how that works. So the next one, so resentful, man, it's okay to be resentful. Remember that. But what's your part? The next one is, am I selfish today? Ask yourself, am I selfish? And sometimes parents are selfish. You know what? And that's okay too, by the way, because there is a selfishness that we have to do in order to self-persevere, to protect ourselves. The same way that I would tell a loved one that's going through the addiction process, hey kid, you got to be selfish right now. You can't worry about what mom, dad, friends, all these people are going through right now. You got to be selfish. So one selfishness helps us. The second selfishness hurts us. And what does that mean? This is it. The mom hears that their son is struggling or daughter struggling on the streets, and they can't sleep at night. And they allow the kid to come home and use inside their own home, even though they had to talk about the boundaries, because they're so selfish about how they felt themselves. As soon as the kid comes in the house, they're like, at least I know my kid's okay. I'm telling you, man, that's a toxic level of selfishness. I always share this about my mom, actually. My mom she wasn't exposed to recovery talk or Al-Anon talk or program talk. She didn't know. So when people don't know, they don't know. But my mom, when she shares at meetings, sometimes shares that when Parham was young, like 18, 19 years old, she used to stay up all night waiting for me to come home, even though she knew at the time I was drinking heavily. And she said that she would be able to fall asleep the moment that she heard me throwing up in the bathroom at night. So my mom's cue to fall asleep, knowing that I'm home safe, was me vomiting in the bathroom. And she'd say, oh, thank God he's home. Thank God he's safe. And I know this doesn't make sense of how could that be selfish, but the fact that payoff that the parent gets of it being okay, there's a selfishness there. And she didn't know it at the time. And she's open about this stuff, by the way. She got it later on, saying like, yeah, that was more for me. Because what if it's for the other person? You just say, hey, you can't do this in this house. I will not tolerate this. This is not okay. This is where we live. This is where we sleep. This is where we go to work. This is where we have other family members. You can't be coming home at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, anytime you want. This is not okay. But as soon as I would come and I throw up, she's like, oh, thank God. See, that's not just about the individual. It's about the feeling they get also. Dishonesty. Am I dishonest today? This one, I mean, I don't have to preach about dishonesty, right? And we all know that. But in the recovery process, in the healing and recovery process, this becomes dangerous because there's one obvious impact of dishonesty, which is like straight up lying to someone, right? We all know that. But there's a second, more subtle version of dishonesty, which is actually being dishonest in a covert way. And what does that mean? If I ask you, mom, dad, grandma, spouse, how are you doing today? And you look at me and say, I'm doing fine. I'm doing okay. But inside, you're alone, you're scared, you're angry, you're overwhelmed, and you just say, I'm doing okay. Guess what? That is being dishonest. That is being a phony. That's putting on a mask. That's saying I'm okay to the outside world, but when no one's around, I'm just going to go inward and just dissolve into myself. There's no need for that in the recovery process. When someone asks you how you're doing, be unapologetically honest with them. In the right setting, I'm not saying, hey, you're at the grocery store and how you doing? You just open up to the person. Where there's the proper space, the sponsor, the counselor, the therapist. And the other thing too, family members, I want you to hear this, please. A lot of you are so motivated and request and want your kids to go see therapists, right? To go work on their addiction. I'm telling you this as a licensed clinician, someone that's been in the field for a while, and you guys sit here and listen to me every week. So obviously you value the things I have to say. The family needs a therapist just as bad as the kid needs a therapist, right? All people going through crisis, turmoil, ups and downs of life, of a lot of overwhelming feelings, need therapists. Remember this, the greatest athletes in the world have coaches. The most disciplined, athletic, talented athletes in the world have coaches because they know they need them. Human beings need another party, another person. Now, it doesn't have to be always paid. You don't have to go, spend a lot of money. This is why sponsorship becomes important. It's just another person to give you perspective. We all need it. Don't fool yourself and lie to yourself and kid yourself thinking that your kid needs a therapist and you don't after you have gone through the addiction process. Because the addiction process has made you also maybe bend your values a little bit, maybe lose yourself a little bit, maybe react in ways or suppress in ways that you never thought you would. So you need the support too. And am I resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid today? Fear, number one thing that you always have to look at. What am I afraid of? There are 1,000 forms of fear, right? It's not always afraid of someone dying. Sometimes it's afraid of looking like a bad parent. Sometimes it's afraid of looking like I screwed up. It's afraid of not becoming the person I always thought I wanted to become. Afraid of failure, afraid of success, afraid of relapse, afraid of addiction, afraid of sobriety, right? Fear of sobriety. Who would have a fear of sobriety? You want to know why? Check this out. Because you've heard like people have a fear of failure and a fear of success, right? You say, why would someone be afraid of success? Fear of relapse and a fear of sobriety is the same thing. You know that your relationship with your loved one is based on a certain type of a relationship and dynamic. Addiction, codependency, helping, enabling, the rescuer. You have an established role that you love. Whether you think you love it or don't, if you've been doing it for a long time, you love it. You might think you don't, but people usually don't do things unless they get something out of them. So you get something out of it. So now the loved one gets clean and sober, right? And they get sobriety. And guess what happens to the family member over there? They start to go through withdrawals. There's nothing to fix anymore. There's nothing to change anymore. There's nothing to rescue anymore. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? There is a fear in that sobriety. The fear of sobriety. Who would have thought? I just came up with that on the spot today. That was kind of cool. Yeah, if anybody, by the way, I know I'm like really, really into this talk and I'm fully invested. If you want to grab my attention, I'm reading the side comments, by the way. So if anything pops up there, let me know if you want me to elaborate on anything. And Also, if you want to pop up on the link, feel free to. I will just let you in the studio. The next one is, am I investing time with the right people? Okay. Remember, so life is all about having an account for your recovery and your sobriety. You put in deposits and you take out withdrawal. Some people in life are toxic to us, and they zap our energy. They zap our vitality. They take. And if that's who we're exposed to, eventually what's going to happen to us? We're going to lose our energy. We're going to lose our drive, our motivation, our passion. We might become depressed. We might become isolated. So are you willing to find people who fuel you? Find people who feed your soul. Find people who help you go in the right direction. This is what I told the participants this morning, group participants. I said, all of you are at a turning point in your life. And I'll say this to you guys watching this right now. Everyone's at a turning point in their life if you're in the recovery process. One way goes back to the road that you come from, and one way goes to a road of unknown, right? So when I say, do you know the right people? Are you investing time with the right people? By definition, I'm also saying that there's some wrong people. Now, this is not a morality argument. I'm not saying some people in life are right and some are wrong. Some are good, some are bad. That is not what I'm saying. But I will tell you this. Some people are right for right now, and some people are wrong for right now, right? If you're at a fork in the road, you best believe that the people you need in your life are the ones who have gone the way of recovery, that know the way of recovery, that can show the way of recovery, so they can help you on this new path you're about to embark on. The wrong people right now are the people that you go on this road of recovery and they tell you, hey, let's go back to the road we're familiar with. Let's go back to the same people, places, and things that we know, right? You know this, family members. If you guys are trying to become, learn about recovery and you hang out with like your family members that know nothing about it, what type of conversations do you hear over there? They're all like rooted in like anger, enabling, like false thinking about addictions, false thinking about recovery, because they don't know any better. I mean, you can't expect them to either. But you hang out with the right people that are reinforcing boundaries, communication, personal responsibility. It's like, whoa, two completely different worlds. The only difference was the people in it. People make a big impact on where we end up in life. A couple comments here popped up. Let's see what Jim said. One of the fears he has, my loved one doesn't need me anymore. Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about, actually. That happens because the codependent, the enabler, has an identity and a role of being like the helper that is needed. Like there's some honor in being needed, right? Like, hey, I'm needed today. Without me, my loved one can't survive. So when the loved one starts surviving on their own, which by the way, wink, wink, they can and they will, the family member is just like, oh my God, I'm not needed anymore. And here's the thing, that person that has that identity didn't pick up that identity right now in their loved one's addiction. They had that feeling when they were a kid. There was a family system, a family structure, something going on in their life that they needed to be needed. They had to rise up. So let's see what Serapis said here. Serapis, by the way, before I read what she wrote, every week on the Buckeye Recovery Network Facebook, I do a staff spotlight. So far, we've had our clinical director, Eric Ochoa. Then we had our clinical supervisor, Sarah. We've had Tony, which is one of our addictions counselors. We've had Pam, which is an administrative kind of support all around, Super Pam. And Sarah's video, if you go watch it on our Facebook, you'll be impressed with who she is, how she shows up, the passion she has. So I haven't even read what she said. So hopefully it matches. You taught me a few years ago that the people we spend the most time with are all the direct reflections of ourselves. It was so valuable to learn that and to make conscious effort to align with people with similar values or lifestyles and people that level me up. Yeah, 100%, Sarah. It's like, show me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are. Birds of a feather flock together. And it is true. It is true. The goal is to always be able to be touched, moved, and inspired by the people we surround ourselves with the hope that we come up to their level. And as we come up, other people are going to have that same feeling towards us. Like there's so many people, Sarah, that look up to you and you do that to them. You bring them up, right? And hopefully to them, they're doing that to someone else too. And I'm glad that was helpful. I do remember that Sarah and I, maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we started personal development and training together, and kind of I do these leadership things, and she wanted to go through some books and stuff. So it's kind of cool that you remember that. I appreciate that. Let's see what my mom said here. All of your today's talk, I've experienced it years before I finally started my own recovery. After years of working on myself through 12-step programs, I feel at peace with myself and others. This is really true. You know, so I got sober like at 24, 25 years old. You know, I'm about to turn 38. So I've been sober for 13 years. And before that, for about, let's just call it for like 4 years, right? I was really struggling. I wasn't exposed to programs. You know, maybe I went to some psychologists or some psychiatrists or that kind of stuff, but I was never exposed to programs, clinicians, counselors, and neither was my family. So my mom and my dad, you know, together, to the best of their ability, they tried to deal with what is addictions. And guess what? They failed every time. Because here's the famous kicker, right? When love isn't enough. Like, who would ever think that? It's like, hey, if you love someone, if you're there for someone, if you support someone, that should be enough. But no, when love isn't enough, when loving you is killing me, when love equals enabling sometimes, and you can't tell the difference. And at the time when my mom and dad did this, they legitimately didn't know any better. So the talk that I would have to them, which I know I don't need to because they're both really at peace with all this stuff, but it would say, hey, you got to let go of that guilt because you did the best you could with what you knew at the time. But once my mom started to learn and go to Al-Anon and go to CODA, and my dad started to go to all the family support groups with the place that I got sober. By the way, a cool fact about my mom and dad, to this day, anytime they can, which is very frequently, they still go back to the same rehab that I got sober at. This is like 13 years later, on Wednesday nights, and participate in multi-family group. You know how cool that is? Like, you're sitting there, your kids are in rehab, and there's this a couple in there, and they're like, oh, what's your kid here for? Oh, no, our kid's not here. Our kid came through here 13 years ago. We just come back because we got so much out of this program, and we got our life because of this program. So that's what's possible in recovery. But yeah, you have come a long way, Mom. You really have. So the next one that I have here, we're at the 30-minute mark, I think. Yeah, anybody else, if you have any questions, I'll always read them just like that, you know, so, or comments. And Behzad, you said zap. I love that word. It is a nice word. They zap your vitality. It means they suck it dry. They take it out of your soul. So, and thanks for all the nice comments, man. You've said a lot of good things about Buckeye lately, and I do appreciate that. None of them go unnoticed. So the next question that I have here is, am I staying in my strength zone? Okay. So our society has something twisted backwards. For whatever reason, when someone's not good at something, they call it a weakness. But when they're not good at that, they tell them to go, hey, work on your weaknesses. We've all heard that, right? I mean, there's a kid, elementary school. He does really good in arts and really good in, like, you know, history, and really good in kind of those type of role in, like, you know, poetry and reading. But the kid just really can't figure out math, right? Just really struggles with math, or really struggles with biology or something like that, chemistry. And the school says, hey, well, you got to really work on this one. You got to bring this one up. But research has found something out that's pretty cool, in my opinion. The school is going to take a long time to figure this one out, but research has found this out. So if you are, let's say, a 3 out of 10 at something, so you're very poor at something, 3 out of 10, and that's consider your weakness. If you work on your weakness, I'm talking about really dedicate yourself to working on it. Maybe you can raise that 3. Actually, research says you can raise it from a 3 to a 5. So you could raise it 2 points. Okay, so you get a little bit better, but you're still a 5 out of 10. Now, if you're a 7 out of 10 at something, so if you're kind of good at something, but not great, if you work on it the same amount of time, energy, effort you put into it, you can raise it 2 points. So you can raise it from a 7 to a 9. Okay. Now, I'm not a rocket scientist here, but what I've noticed and observed of society is people don't care for average. When you're a 5 out of 10 at something, people don't care about it. Nobody says, hey, I'm going to go watch this movie because it's average. I'm going to go to this restaurant because the food is just average. I'm going to listen to this person because they're just average. Nobody cares about average, right? People care about what is exceptional. A 9 out of 10 is exceptional. People go somewhere where it's a 9 out of 10 to eat. People go watch something that's a 9 out of 10. So my hope is that you understand what your strengths are and double down and triple down on your strengths. Let your strengths take you to the next level. So, and what does that look like in the recovery world? If you know you're good at something, if you know you're good at being a certain way, like if you know you're just a good listener and you can listen and you can take in response and you can create that safety for somebody, but you know you're not good at telling someone, guiding someone, suggesting someone what to do, like the advice always backfires. Stop doing the weakness. Focus on your strengths. Focus on your strengths. So many men and women waste years of their life trying to become good at something that they're just not. And there's nothing wrong with that. You could do something for a hobby, right? There's nothing wrong with doing something for a hobby, but stay in your strength zone. And here's the thing. They asked Henry Ford one day, that's running, the biggest Ford, vehicle company at the time. This is long before the Teslas of the world came over, right? It's like Ford Motor Vehicle was a big deal. They asked him, like, how do you manage all this? Like, how do you know so much about so many things? He's like, actually, I don't know much about anything, but I know somebody that knows a lot about something. So I rely on other people's strengths to make up for my shortcomings, my deficiencies, my inadequacies. So family members, when a loved one asks you something, say, hey, I don't know. This is above my pay grade. This is above my knowledge. This is above my skill set. But I think you should ask so, and so, who is the person that's an expert at it, like your counselor. You don't have to know everything that other people know. You don't have to be everything that other people are, man. Just be yourself. Focus on your strengths. Sayonara to the weaknesses. And that's another thing too. It's like people always say, Parm, you're so good at like speaking and connecting and all this preparation for these talks, or you're good at coaching basketball or something like that. If you guys ever saw me grab a screwdriver, or if you guys ever saw me paint something, or if you guys ever saw me try to solve a math problem, you'll say, oh man, this guy's a little bit he's intellectually challenged. I think we've got to give this guy some support. I don't think he can function in society, because you know what? I realize there's certain things I'm not good at and I don't care. I'm cool with it. You know what? There's so many people that are good at those things. I'll just stick in my strength zones. Because guess what? If you stay in your strengths, it produces something called passion. And passion creates, addiction consumes. Addiction consumes and passion creates. So stay in your strength zones, whatever that is. The next one I have here, this is probably the most important one and it says, am I taking care of today? Okay, so that's the question everyone that is in the healing process must ask themselves. Am I taking care of today? It's cliche to say, my friends, that yesterday's gone. It's dead and gone. There's nothing you can do about what you did or didn't do yesterday, last week, last month, last year. Like there's certain people that live in the past, legitimately live in the past. I know I could talk a little bit about, the Iranian culture, you call them the Persians out here. Not all of them, but there are certain people that every time they sit down and talk, and I'm not making this up, and this happens in other cultures too, so please don't think I'm just, saying something to the Iranians here, but they start talking about a revolution that happened like 60 years ago. Like they're legitimately stuck in 1978, not 60 years ago, 40 years ago. They're legitimately stuck in that moment. Like, dude, it's been 40 years. Why are you caught up and hung up of something that happened 40 years ago? And that macro level conversation happens on a daily basis. Something's happening today and people are caught up on what happened last week or last month. Let it go. Let it go, because if you don't take care of today, next week, next month, next year will come, and today will be the yesterday that is dead and gone. The only time you can influence the timeline of your life is right now. If you want to not have regrets tomorrow, take care of today. If you want tomorrow to be filled of regrets and the coulda, woulda, shoulda, go binge 16 hours of Netflix today. And tomorrow when you wake up, say, I wish I would have done that shit yesterday that I was supposed to do. Simple, man. And, now is the only time that we have. I picked this up really quickly in my first month of sobriety. My brother, Farzan, which some of you may or may not know, he turned me on to a book that he was very passionate about, which was called The Power of Now. And I would listen to this audiobook every single night going to sleep, The Power of Now. And it just opened up my eyes to the significance, to the magnitude of the present moment and what's possible and available in the present moment that correlates with the rest of my life. In that book, man, you know what I learned? That there is no such thing as the future. Now, some of you are like, this guy's out of his mind on this Saturday morning. What's he smoking? There is no such thing as the future. The future is just another now that hasn't arrived yet, right? Because if I take this present moment and connect it to the next moment and the next moment and the next moment, these moments connect. And when tomorrow comes and I ask you, hey, when is it? You're like, well, it's right now. Because the future is just a combination of now. So if you take care of the now, what happens? The future has a heck of a lot better chance of working out the way you want it to work out. And that's a very, very powerful place to be, because we always feel so powerless when it comes to future events. But not many people feel powerless over the present moment, man. This is where we got our power. So if you access that power and do what you need to do, take care of today, when the future comes, there's a lot better chance. And there's no guarantees in life, right? Because that's the whole beauty of this thing. Nothing's certain. But at least you have a better chance of landing in the area that you hope to land in. The next one that I have here is, am I taking time to think? Now, this one's huge because people think, well, I'm thinking all the time. Some people say they think way too much, like they overthink. I'm not talking about the automatic thoughts that you have that you can't control or stop, right? Like the hyperactive mind that doesn't stop thinking. That's not what I'm talking about, because you're not doing that. Your mind is doing that. Ready for another quote straight out of The Power of Now? Do you use your mind, or does your mind use you? Right? Automatic, mindless thinking that you're not a part of and your brain's doing it, that is your mind using you. You have no control in that moment. But when you say, I'm going to pause, I'm going to stop, I'm going to breathe, and I'm going to give myself a chance, opportunity to reflect, to think, to see what happened today, to see what happened this week, to see what happened this month, to see what lessons I can learn and how I can apply those lessons and how I can improve my tomorrow, my next week, my next month. That's when you use your mind. That's when you show up. So do you take time to reflect and think? Right? Do you actually schedule it? Do you prioritize it in your day? And if you don't know how to do that, at the end of every single night, set aside 15, 20 minutes to reflect, to think. At the end of every week, set aside a few hours to think and to reflect. At the end of every month, set aside a half a day to think and reflect on the month that passed. At the end of every year, take aside a weekend to think and reflect on the year that passed. At the end of every decade, take aside an entire week to think and reflect. It's our responsibility to our journey. Because if you don't take time to think and reflect, you will get lost. You will get lost. And how do you say, hey, Parm, how do you say this with so much certainty? Do you have any idea, in over 10 years of doing counseling and therapy, how many people have sat in a chair right across from me, literally right across from me, and said, I have no idea how I got to where I am today. I have no idea how all this happened. You know what those people are telling me? They don't know when they got lost and how long they've been lost for. You want to know why? Throughout the process, they never stopped to reflect and think about what's going on, to get present. They just kind of been like a hook in the mouth, and life has been taking them any which way it chooses. And then they stop, they take the hook out and say, oh, which way's up, which way's down, which way's, all that kind of stuff. So the last one I have here, by the way, any side comments, let me see. Yeah, just something about, relating to what I'm saying and living in the moment. Well, it's so funny. It's like I talk about being present in the now and the power of taking care of today. And I go on like a 7-minute rant about, the future doesn't exist. And someone says, so peacefully, living in the moment. Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to say. So thank you for summarizing my 7-minute rant into a 3-word eloquent sentence. I appreciate it, Vita. And the last one that I have is, am I taking time to help others? Am I taking them to a higher view? So I know that the process of addictions is overwhelming. I know that when you first come into the rooms and you first come into the programs, you are looking for help because guess what? You need the help. That's okay. Some of you watching this, I know there's a few parents and grandparents that are watching this right now that they're kind of new to this process. And if that's your case, you should be trying to get all the help you can, get all the help you can, get all the help you can, get all the information you can, the knowledge you can, the experience, ask all the questions you want. But some of you have been around for days, weeks, months, years, some of you decades. And my question to you is, am I helping other people out? Are you helping other people out? Because now you're in the position of actually having that knowledge, having that information, having that wisdom. And what are you doing with it? When you see a mom or dad come into an Al-Anon group or come into a Nar-Anon group, and you see them just not knowing what the heck is happening, like they're afraid. They think everyone in that room is weird. They think that nobody in that room is experiencing what they experience. They think that something's wrong with them for being told to go to that room. When you see that, do you see yourself in that? Do you remember when you were that person? Do you remember how uncomfortable it was? Do you remember how scary it was? Do you remember how much of a failure you thought you were, that some professional counselor suggested you to go to a support group for someone else's addiction? I mean, if you really think about how intense Al-Anon is on that level, it's someone else is like addicted to drugs and alcohol and screwing up your life, and the counselor has the audacity and I was going to use a word that I shouldn't use, but has the, to tell you to go to an Al-Anon group for yourself to get support. You're like, what? I don't think you heard what I said. I told you that my loved one just screwed up our entire life, our finances, our health, our marriage. He screwed up everything. You're telling me to go get help? And you go to this 12-step place to get support for yourself. Like, that's a weird feeling. So if you've been around the block and you know what's going on, what you have to do is see yourself in that person. When they walk in the room, go up to them and say, hey, my name is so-and-so. You're welcome here. I hope you keep coming back. Here's some of the literature that helped me out. This paragraph was something that spoke to me in the beginning. Here's my phone number if you ever want to shoot me a text or give me a call. And you know what? Maybe out of the 10 people you do that to, one of them responds. But that one person who responds, you might be able to help them change their entire life around. You might even save someone's kid, man. And if you don't do that, maybe you just save them. And am I taking other people to higher ground? So the reason why it's important to take people up is because as we go up with them, we also get closer to the top. The view changes for the helper also, right? The view changes for the helper. The higher you take other people, the higher you go. The more beautiful the perspective, right? So yeah, thank you. I'm going to put up some comments here that just came through. So my mom said, you nailed it today. Thank you. I appreciate it. Jim said, keep getting help, and one day you'll see, there it is. It's one day you'll become the helper. Anybody in the field of recovery and healing will tell you this, that they came in broken and other people loved them until they were able to love themselves. Any person worth their salt will tell you the same thing. Nobody comes in here loving themselves. I've never seen a person admitting I love myself. I've not seen a family member coming in here saying, yeah, I just love myself so much and I love my life and I'm so proud of everything. So other people come and let them love you until one day you look and say, you know what? I was just a human being that was doing the best I could with the limited knowledge that I had. And you know what? I'm starting to like the person I see, maybe even love the person that I see. And then that person has a heck of a lot better chance of being a helper. Debbie said, once again, this was truly powerful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Debbie, for, I mean it, you, the husband, just all the whole family. I thank you guys so much for being here every week. Lynn, by the way, love Ed too. I want you to know that, Lynn. You're truly amazing at what you do. Forget about the screwdriver. Yeah, trust me, I figured that one out. You know, it's I remember one day trying to put curtains up into a studio apartment that I had, and I was watching videos on how to use an electric screwdriver. I almost lost function of my left hand because the electric screwdriver almost went inside my hand. So after that, I realized, you know what? There are others who are good at that, and I'll just stand in front of people and start rambling until they say nice things to me. So thank you, Lynn. Eileen, I appreciate you a lot. You've been here from the beginning. Helping others is honorable, but also find balance to still take care of yourself and not get drawn into others' dramas, because the dramas have been part of our lives for so long. I mean, preaching to the choir there, right? You know, how much do I talk about balance? And I do believe that until you have fully reconnected with yourself and been at peace with yourself, you can't be at peace with others. So in the beginning of the process, I think it's double down, triple down, quadruple down on taking care of yourself, like being selfish about that, until you get to the point of like being okay with self, and then being able to connect to others and help other people out. So you're right. Some people use helping as a form of a drug, by the way. Let me just clear this one up. There are people that come in and all they want to do is help at first, because guess what? The more I focus on you, the less I have to focus on me. And what does that sound like? Coping with help as an honorable one, right? It's like you said, it's honorable. So I can even use helping as a drug to not focus on me, and I'll still get some pats on my back. And I learned that in counseling school, Eileen. It's counselors spend 40 hours a week, for example, focusing on other people. So that means for 40 hours that week, they didn't think about themselves. You do that for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. That's why a lot of counselors can get lost too. Munir, thank you. And St. June for watching every week. It was a great subject. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It sounds like everyone got something out of this. I love and appreciate all of you. If you know that this was a helpful conversation, feel free to share this. I don't mind if you share this on your social media, if you send the link to somebody. I really don't mind at all. You know, this is even though it's usually our own regulars watching this, this is free and for all. There's no catch to it. You've never seen me talk about, the program or anything like that in it. I don't talk about the company. I don't talk about any of that stuff. This is pure family education and support with the purest intention. So love and appreciate all you guys. I will see you back next week. Same time, same place. Thank you and have a wonderful weekend.